Welcome and thanks for joining us on another episode of the Wealth Tech Insider. I'm your host, Danny Legrand, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Peter Warne, Joint Managing Director at Finura Group. As we wrap up a massive year, we're diving into a special episode where we'll revisit the bold predictions we made at the start of 2024. Together, Pete and I are going to unpack what we got right, where we were partially on the mark, and the moments that made us go, well, what were we thinking? This is more than just a look back. It's a reflection really on how the wealth tech sector has evolved this year and what these trends really mean for the future of financial advice and technology. Hey, Pete, how you doing?
I'm good, Danny. Great to be back with you 24 hours later.
I don't know what you mean.
For listeners, this is our second go at it. We might talk a bit about software things we don't like later in the episode, but we had some technical glitches yesterday, and I just think secretly Danny's looking for another opportunity to spend an hour with me talking podcasts. But this is take two, and you know what? It should be better, Danny. Let's make it more entertaining.
Yeah, we've already done a run through. Yes, we did have had an entire run through of this. Sorry, not a run through. We recorded it for real, and yeah, things messed up with the piece of technology we use to edit our podcast. So I'm still a little bit emotionally raw from
Merry
that.
Christmas.
Still having a Menti B. So
anyway. Yeah, Menti B. So Menti B is a new term I heard this week, care of Danny, who's like everyone at the end of her tether this time of year, and none of us have much resilience to things that go wrong unexpectedly. So just tell everyone what Menti B means. Danny.
Menti B is a mental breakdown, and shout out to my daughters for coming up with Menti B as something that's entered the Finura vernacular.
It is absolutely locked in the Finura vernacular now. We'll put that in employee handbook so people know what we're talking about.
Brilliant. All right. Well, let's stay sane for the next 45 minutes or so. All right. So we're going to go through our predictions for 2024. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, we're going to look at what we got right, what we got partially right, and what we got wrong. So full disclosure, we are self-marking our predictions and how we went. So I'm just going to, Pete, if it's okay, I'm going to read through the prediction and then I'm going to give us a score. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Cool. All right, let's go to the first one. So prediction number one was the emergence of AI washing in wealth tech. So AI washing is when products are advertised as using AI, even if they actually don't or only use it minimally. We repeat our view that AI is a feature, not a product. And like Microsoft Copilot, we expect to see AI features become more common in wealth tech. Even companies with little to prove will find it hard to resist talking about the AI story. We certainly saw this with with NetWealth in their AGM. I believe it was at the beginning of this year, mentioned AI 21 times, and a company that probably doesn't really need to prove anything. So we're already awash with startups saying that they are AI companies, and many of these solutions will vanish as fast as they appear. So I'm going to give us a partially right for this one, or not yet. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we didn't probably see any overt AI washing situations yet, although I think some of these will probably emerge once some investors work out what they've invested in, particularly in the startup space, because it's been pretty frothy, right, in the last 24 months with AI. And I think, look, it's been a fine balance because I think, to be fair to NetWealth, Hub, Iris, these sort of tech companies that are listed, that there's a lot of pressure from shareholders to say, well, what's your AI strategy? You know, the boards are asking questions. I've had lots of clients this year ringing me before board meetings saying, oh, we've been asked about AI. What do we tell them? And so I kind of understand why businesses are sort of having to have a position on AI and what they're doing, because there's obviously lots of implications for that. But I still think there's been sprinkles of AI, AI jargon, AI jazz hands going on in the sector. We did see some companies who have sort of come and gone relatively quickly who were making some pretty bold claims that they can go from a file note to a fully compliant, personalised SOA almost instantly. I haven't heard from those guys in a while. So talking about that. So I think, you know, like everything, we always sort of overestimate what a piece of tech can do in the short term and maybe underestimate in the long run. And so I think that's true certainly for AI. But like, I don't know, it's been kind of exciting at least, right? It hasn't been dull this year.
No, it definitely hasn't been dull. And there was this real sense of excitement, wasn't there, at the beginning of the year? There was also a sense of fear, I think, too. You know, we'll talk about this throughout the pod, but, you know, people were genuinely concerned about how their jobs were going to fare in financial advice, particularly power planners. I think kind of, you know, I felt like they were attacked. The wall was coming at them and, you know, these AI tools were going to be able to get rid of your power planner. So, you know, we certainly haven't seen that happen in the past 12 months. And we know how difficult it is to implement regular tech, tech that we are aware of and that we know in our industries. Getting your head around AI and how to actually implement it and use it properly, I think is something we probably got a little bit ahead of ourselves with. Do you feel like it was a bit .com-ish? Like a bit...
Yeah, I think certainly if you were looking to raise capital as a startup in the last 24 months, you pretty much had to put .ai as a suffix on your company name to sort of get funding, right? So, there's been a ridiculous amount of funding that's gone into sort of AI-driven startups. In fact, I think PitchBook, their data is that 74% of all AI funding in venture capital for the last 24 months has been for AI-based companies. So even this year alone, about $53 billion alone has just gone into literal seed funding for startups. So Danny, maybe we haven't seen the full extent of those AI tools now coming to market. We'll probably see a lot more next year. There's often a bit of a lag effect. But I don't know, did it catch you off guard just how much it did cut through with advisors who are normally pretty resistant or ignorant to tech? But for some reason, AI broke all the normal conventions we see with new tech coming into the mainstream.
Yeah, definitely. I think advisors, it's a good point. Advisors specifically got really excited about it. I think they sort of thought that it was going to solve all of these problems and they can get out and see more clients or, mass service their clients when it came to review time and all that sort of thing. So absolutely the excitement was there with the advisors. And I think, cautiously, the back and middle officers were probably on the same page that we're on when we approach technology change and that, let's solve some other problems that we've got in the business. And I think we'll talk about that in the next prediction.
But still, I mean, look, I love the enthusiasm of the advisors to try and embrace new things. I mean, that was our challenge 5 years ago. To even get technology on the agenda was impossible. Even at conferences and things, the technology was always an afterthought, and now it's kind of mainstream. So selfishly for what we do, we think it's awesome, but I think you're right. There's a huge gap between expectations and reality right now.
Yeah, definitely. We're tired, right? It's the same. We've got the same systems. Nothing sort of really changed with the stuff that is the technology that is available to us in financial services. So, of course, a new innovative tool is certainly exciting. I really do get that. Alrighty, let's move on to prediction number 2, and we promise to our listeners we are not all about AI, but this one is another AI prediction. All right, number 2, AI mania overpromises and underdelivers for advisors. Copilot mania will persist, and we will see AI and Copilot apps for every conceivable use case. Most will flame out as AI inevitably becomes a feature of the products we already use today. So to our listeners, I'm reading out our actual prediction. The product adoption curve tells us that as early adopters run with this technology, many in the herd will be left questioning its value. Remember how long it took to convince advisors to move from desktop software to cloud solutions. Technology adoption and training are often the most significant challenges IFAs face, even with systems they've been using for many years. AI is like steroids for a white-collar employee. Without question, it will give you a massive productivity edge, but you still need to get to the gym. I really like that analogy you put in there, Pete. Good one. Can I start on this one?
Full of a lot of things. Yes, first crack.
Okay. I do spend most of my days entrenched in our advice businesses. So let me try and be a semi-authority here. All right. So I think, AI is a tool like any other piece of technology. And as we know with any piece of technology, resistance to change is probably the biggest thing that we deal with when we're implementing that change from a technology point of view in a business. So we need to look at it in the same way that we look at an Xplan or an AdvisorLogic or any end-to-end advice CRM. AI needs to sort of fit into the advice process. We need to figure out exactly where it is going to fit into the advice process. It's not going to be the magical stick that solves all of our problems. So that means, we might have to rethink our processes. We might have to reinvigorate them depending on where we're going to put AI. And then we need to roll it out. And we need to beta test that with users like we do with regular technology. And we have to iterate on it and we have to change things. And then we have to keep reviewing it as we move along. I don't think AI is any different to any of the tools, really, that we use and roll out. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I heard, talk about analogies. I'm going to throw another one in the mix, which I only heard last night, was that a good way to think about AI is like electricity. So people don't want electricity, but they wanted what electricity could do. They wanted light bulbs. They wanted, so I think it's this piece where we're still not exactly sure how it's all going to play out and where it really fits. And I do maintain the whole concept of a feature, not a product. And I think you've done a really good job in the trenches over the last 12 months of sort of breaking that down in real terms for advice practices and saying, hey, of the jobs to be done across our advice business, here is the obvious places we see AI having applicability today, and maybe here's some things for tomorrow, for the future as things evolve. But let's not totally overhaul our entire business and tech stack, and on a promise. Effectively, you've also been running a bit of DD on AI products, haven't you, for clients? So you do. So this is something not many people probably know, but part of the work that Danny's team does for IFA is, I'm so glad you do this now, Danny, for clients before they jump in, is you run the ruler over some products as due diligence that they're keen to explore. Is there anything you've sort of picked up from those processes?
Yeah, look, I don't really have an issue with the products themselves. The products appear to be, and the due diligence checks out that they are doing what they're saying that they're doing. And in this case, we are specifically talking about file noting apps here, and apps that sort of go from file noting also through to preparing the paraplanning request form, for example. So, great efficiencies that we know that they will hit. I think the thing is, though, from where I sit, I feel like, we've got Copilot available to us. Most of us use Microsoft, and Copilot is there. And if it's not there for you guys, it's available for you right now. So I think Copilot, sure, it's not as automated as some of these tools. You definitely have to do a few manual steps. Well, I do anyway, with the way that I've tried to hack a file note. And I'm sure there's way smarter people out there than me that can do a little bit more automation around the stuff that I've done. But I think if we always say this too, look to what you've got already, keep it simple, try and follow the path of least resistance. If it's there, if you're paying for it, let's check it out. Let's see if that's going to work. And, it might not work, and you might revert back to those tools, and that's fine. But I think, Copilot, it's Microsoft. Surely it's only going to get better. I guess the common issue with recording Teams meetings and things like that is that it doesn't really record in-person meetings very well. That's the current concern. But, my suggestion is you can kind of work around that. That's okay. You're still getting a really good efficiency when it comes to taking notes, I feel.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. I'm still surprised by how few firms have turned on professional Copilot. So they're using the basic version for their internet, browsing, that sort of thing, instead of, so they use Copilot, so ChatGPT. But I presented to a group of IFAs a few months ago, and there was about 50 practices in the room, and only 3 had turned on the pro version of Teams. So I was doing a bit of show and tell of all the things that we use at Finura, the way we record all our meetings, and we can access information and query things that have happened in the business. And they were just stunned. They had no idea that this stuff existed, nor did they. A lot of them didn't even know that AI, you can actually generate file notes off the back of using Teams. So I think some of these, and I'm not discrediting, some of the AI file noting apps are pretty good. They generate really good classified file notes, and so I can understand there's a sort of an instant gratification perhaps of buying a bit of software that just works instantly. But even those people, we're noticing as they use it more and more, they're finding it less effective for different reasons. I can't understand why, but we're finding a lot of clients telling us now, I've stopped using that app because it just wasn't doing everything I wanted. So because it's pulling you out of your world. That's probably the challenge we would find. So there's 1 or 2 of them that I think are good because they integrate really well with Microsoft. And so they're not trying to pull you out of their world. It's just an app that sits on top of Microsoft, and I reckon that's great. We're probably just a bit more wary of some of those applications that are trying to almost lock you in through product features, that you're almost going to be dependent on these tools if too much client data is there. That's probably where the red flags are for me. But honest truth, I just think we still have a staggering number of businesses that haven't turned on Teams Premium for using those full features. And we just say to clients, Danny, just even start recording your internal meetings just to get a feel for it before you turn on the clients. And interesting, that same group with the 50 practices, of the one, obviously not a lot had seen those sort of features, but even a bigger percentage were still pretty concerned about recording meetings and just what that really meant. So I don't know whether we're hearing a lot more of the sizzle than the reality of what's going on, because particularly for clients that have never met you before and you say, hey, I'm going to hit the record button, some generations are not cool with that still. So there's that piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that you need to roll out, right, to your clients. So it's another thing you have to think about. So when we say we're treating it like any other tool in your tech stack, that's part of the strategy. It's like rolling out a client portal. You just don't hand your clients a login and tell them to go in there. You've got to hand them the login.
I thought that's how it worked.
You've got to hand them the login and, tell them this is how you're going to be communicating with them into the future. And, depending on the bells and whistles, this is where they can see their portfolio valuations, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I just also want to quickly go back to your point about being a feature not a product. I really think that that makes a lot of sense. And, we're seeing that sort of play out in a really efficient way. And, as you know, we're rolling out HubSpot for one of our clients at the moment. HubSpot is a global CRM, so it's not it's not the traditional advice CRMs that we're used to. But I was building some workflows in there the other day, and it's got AI embedded into the workflow tool there. So you just say, I want to do these 5 things, and it builds out the workflow for you.
Yeah, super cool.
So easy. I think it took me maybe 2 minutes to build a workflow in HubSpot.
Wow.
Amazing. And it got it right. I was really impressed.
If that other tool, Zapier has that feature now, so you can build Zaps. So Zapier is a workflow automation tool that connects a bunch of apps. For those that don't know what that is, you can use natural language now to tell it exactly what the Zap is that you're trying to build, and it'll build it out for you. So I think we're going to see more of this, right? And I really hope it finds its way into wealth, because I look at, a lot of people express frustration about building workflows in advice CRMs. Well, I get it, right? Because it's quite clunky to do. But if those companies can, how good would it be if Iris actually could build a natural language workflow solution like that? That would solve a lot of challenges for businesses that just struggle to think through all those natural steps. And that is absolutely something that AI nails. It really works out how to build it sort of knows the end to end, and then it can help you break it down into the individual components really effectively. So that'd be great. If that was our trend for 2025, I'd be so pleased.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Agreed. All right. Let's move on to prediction number 3. So we said tech providers wrangle back greater control of their product distribution and service strategy. A fragmented advice market has given rise to substantial discounting and reseller arrangements between software companies, licensees, and IFA communities. These make little commercial sense. Discounts are now expected rather than earned, and due to the reduced market for advice tech, software development costs have significantly increased. Therefore, to meet the expectations of improved product experience, such as utilising AI, companies will have to reallocate more resources towards R&D spending. Software companies will take a hard line with third-party intermediaries, and advisors need to prepare for a significant pricing reset over the next 24 months. Investment Trends research in 2022 showed that firms expect to spend 46% more on technology in the coming years. I am going to give us probably a wrong on that one.
Wrong or not yet, Danny?
Yeah, okay. All right. I'll give us a half point.
You're actually a harsher marker, I reckon, than an independent third party would be. But nonetheless, we can worry about that next year. Yeah, but look, I think we were wrong in the sense I thought the software companies would show a bit more teeth and grit through some of these periods, because not because they want to, by the way, but because there are such commercial realities playing out. So some of our software companies in the market spend a very low amount of money on R&D. So R&D for us is improving their products. And they openly talk about the fact that they want to change that. They know they need that a lot of it's chicken and egg, because a lot of the customer dissatisfaction is driven by lack of new features and benefits. But the problem with the software companies is if we keep giving discounts and don't put prices up, and we have all these strange arrangements in place, then how the hell are we going to spend more money on software? How are we going to build better products? And, we're probably living a bit of this now that, we have a software application business at Finura. So we've sort of now stepped into that space, and I'm learning, how much it actually costs to build and maintain software, and how high expectations are of users. And you can't do that by giving away your products for free. That's the reality. So I think there's a lot of money left on the table that's sort of frittered away, so to speak, on things that don't necessarily benefit users in the long run. I think maybe they might feel like they benefit people in the short run, but if our software does not get better, then I don't think there's any winners in that scenario. So I'm probably a little disappointed this didn't play out, to be honest with you. I know it would have been hard and brutal, but that's not to say it won't happen in the future, because I think those themes are there. If we want our software providers in our sector, and even our platforms, to introduce AI features, they come with costs. They come with development costs, and they come with operating costs to run those AI features. So something has to give. And so, yeah, I still feel like this is going to happen at some point, but it takes a bit of courage to do it. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Danny? I mean, we still have a very opaque model for how software is distributed and managed in our industry. It's probably unlike other industries, I think.
Yeah. And yeah, good point. I feel like we have looked at technology, and rightly so, it's just been the way of it. We've looked at technology as an operational cost. We just have to pay for tech. We haven't looked at it as an investment necessarily. Yeah. And I think the other thing I wanted to just raise too, when we see this, tech companies are heavily discounting or, offering discounts if you're part of those communities or whatever it might
or a
be.
6 month free, or a 6 month. I mean,
free trials.
Since when is free 6 months in software going to ever recoup the costs of changing software? Like, when is that going to work? It's not a reason to change software that you get 6 months for free. I mean, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of breeds this behavior, I think, where you're just, we know how long it takes to implement technology. It's a good couple of years to get something just up and running, to get people adopting the tech properly, to get them used to it, to get them happy in there, serving them on a day-to-day basis. But if you're jumping from provider to provider just because it's cheaper, you're never giving that technology a chance to actually help you. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a good behavior to have. Necessarily, I don't think it's breeding good, healthy technology perceptions, I feel.
Nor are procurement processes driven purely on price.
Mm.
And how many times have we had clients come to us that have left a software vendor for another software vendor, and when you pair it all back, you worked out they did it for price. Because to be fair, that you want competition, you want cost-effective prices, but there was a bit of aggressive pricing that happened to win a deal. But I guess the intangible expenses around config, implementation, and change management just were not considered. And so, lo and behold, they end up going back to where they started.
Yeah, bouncing back. Yeah.
No one wins in that scenario, right?
No.
Sort of probably part of why we started doing what we're doing, right?
And it causes it's incredible frustration, right, to the teams. You can see them going, oh no. Sometimes when we come in, this might be, the third or fourth time they've changed technology, and already we're off to a bad start because they've been through it before.
Yeah.
And I understand they've got now technology consultants who are going to potentially change things up again. So I understand. But one thing we've been doing, and I feel like we can get better at this next year, is doing the ROI work. So we're actually now drilling down to how much time savings the new technology, or even the existing technology just adopted better, is going to save in time efficiencies and all that sort of stuff. So, you can actually see for real then the potential. There's not even a potential, the realities of the uplift in technology and what it's going to do for your business. And that's really been helping people understand that it's an investment rather than, just another operational cost.
Yeah, whatever I can do to change that mind, me. Whenever I'm talking publicly, I'll sort of say those things. I'd love that to be the mindset. It just isn't quite yet. And I think we're on a journey, though. I just think because for so long in our sector, if you were an advisor or a business that you were licensed with someone attached to a big bank, you often got software for free. Your platform gave it to free or whatever the case was. So we're probably just learning. And I respect business owners. Like, we're business owners, we're small business owners. Like, pressure on cost is enormous, and particularly in a high inflation environment. Totally get it. But there comes a point where throwing people at the problem just isn't working anymore. And so that's probably where your things sort of come at. And the common feature for certainly our clients by a subset is they're all growing. Like, they've all got lists of clients that they want to see. It's not a say. We don't have a lead generation problem in our industry. We've got a capacity challenge to solve. But there's no point building capacity with people, because we're just actually a bigger business that's less profitable and more complicated. So I think the way you approach that ROI is really important. And I think the distinction is, it's not what the software company's ROI assessment, little flashy thing on the website is. It's actually what we've worked out based on what that business currently does versus what the reality would look like if they implemented this well. And quite often it's not your software, is it, Danny? It's just actually using the stuff you've got properly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Are you sort of starting to feel for licensees? I feel like we know that they're moving to having a tech APL now.
Yep.
And that's really difficult for a licensee to have multi-choice technologies for their advisor network, because at the end of the day, they're responsible for the compliance as the licensee. And that's a really tricky thing to try and manage. The technology is a facilitator of all the information that's happening on the day-to-day. And if the licensee has to, manage and take care of multiple pieces of tech, that's a lot of resources and expense that needs to go into that. But also, how does that actually happen? We know we're not very good at integrations with our software here. Yeah. There are some applications out there that do support that. But again, it relies on the underlying business utilising that piece of technology properly. So, yeah, I'm sort of feeling for the licensees there. That's a bit of a conundrum.
Yeah, they have real challenges because obviously there's just always this competing tension between a business owner who sees themselves as in control of their own destiny, wanting to make their own tech decisions, and a licensee who quite rightly says, well, actually, there's some real wrinkles with that. We can't actually serve you properly if you go and use that other bit of software. And I think particularly when it comes to advice, actually legislative advice and the legal frameworks around that, really hard for a licensee to ensure that there's compliant advice frameworks and processes in multiple software solutions. So, it's a challenge for everyone, not just the licensees, but the software companies. How do we support all of this? And so I think that's the big one. And obviously cyber, so licensees are on the hook for cyber. And so, so I just think it's like the old story in any business. You just can't be all things to all people. So I think there's just going to be a situation potentially where some people are just going to opt out and get their own license if they want to be in control of their own destiny and have their own very bespoke tech. They're going to have to do that. I just don't think major licensees are going to be able to cope with that model. In the state, like a franchise, my dad was in the Mitre 10 franchise. He owned Mitre 10 stores. He couldn't just go and pick whatever point of sale tools he wanted or buy the paint wherever he wanted it. There was a process that they had to follow to get group buying power and get efficiency and all those kind of things. So, I think that's where it's heading.
Yep. Okay. All right. Let's move on to number 4. So we said digital advice makes ripples rather than waves. At least 5 significant super funds will announce their digital advice offerings in 2024. We will hear less about just how much traction and take up these offerings are getting. We are on the record as saying that digital advice is already here. Players such as Ativo have proven you can provide personal advice at scale to willing consumers, even under the constraints of current legislation. With the prospect of smoother regulations and an expectation by the government that super funds will open up advice offerings to members, you would expect an explosion of new digital advice offerings in 2024 and 25. We are less optimistic. The key to digital advice is not technology, but how well a superannuation fund can engage, inform and reach members who are always on their mobile phones. What do you think about this one?
Oh, I got this right. Surely give us this one, Danny. Because now we probably didn't get 5 big super funds. I think there's 4 from memory. So I added up. There was sort of CFS has done something for the TiVo, Host Plus, Aware, ART. Yeah. So I think we're probably get close to 5. So that's probably the thing. But what we were also right about was, we've heard very little data on the cut through, the experience. How many members are getting advice? No one's sharing that yet. So I just feel that funds are great at marketing investment performance. And what else do they market?
Yeah, I think investment performance is a big one.
Okay, maybe prove the point there.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to build a story around, hey, we can do other things for you, then that's a different thing. So I feel like the funds that have a more intuitive understanding of advice already will do this really, really well. I think funds that have never really engaged or seen advice as a bit of an afterthought are going to struggle to sort of connect with people. And there's just still this broader community issue we haven't nailed as a sector on just what is financial advice? When do I see an advisor? And that's a government issue. That's a consumer education type of issue. So I think we were right, but at the same time, I'm really pleased to see some funds starting to do this stuff, because the problem with many sectors that are really conservative like ours is that no one wants to be first, but no one wants to be last. So I think it's going to be a very busy year for 2025 in digital advice. I certainly know from our institution consulting side, it's going to be a very, very busy year. There'll be a lot more announcements of funds actually implementing digital advice, which is really cool. It's going to be the one of the great all-time experiments to sort of validate, do Australians really want financial advice, even if it's almost free?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it needs to be, to your point, super engaging, right? Whatever we do, whatever's going to go en masse to a consumer needs to be very engaging. And we know from our IFA consulting business that even, client portal adoption for IFA clients is really tricky. It's really, really hard to get them into the client portal, and it's a slowly approach, right, to get them to be using that client portal and understanding the benefits of it. How do you do that en masse, to millions of consumers, when all of the consumers are probably on TikTok and Insta and all the rest of it, and getting things, instantly in this really engaging way? It's got to be a rethink on how you're going to engage these consumers.
Yeah, attention spans are pretty short.
Yeah.
And so, when we see some digital advice journeys being built out, I'm in the design stage and it's looking like a 25-minute minimum process for someone who's quite fast at typing. You almost have to assume they're going to lose the member. The attrition dropout rates, and I've seen data from some digital advice providers who can just literally predict the drop-off rates at certain times. So there's lots of tools you can do when you're building software to make people keep people in it. But I don't know. You tell me, Danny. You've got daughters that use these apps. Danny doesn't use TikTok. Everyone, she's a very social media.
I also banned my 14-year-old from social media.
So I have to literally download funny stuff that I find on these things and send it to Danny on WhatsApp so she can actually, so I can share moderately interesting memes. But what do you think? What's your attention span, Danny? Like, if you were going to do something on the couch at night, would you be sitting there with your laptop open?
No. I don't think so. No, unless it's critically important, whatever it is I'm doing. No, attention spans are short.
Yeah,
we're thinking in a different way. We're operating in a different way.
Yeah, so I just think, but what I would encourage is, and I don't think we're quite there with the tech, either the people we have or the way we think about stuff, but there's a very fixed binary view of how we build these solutions. So it's basically, we do all our discovery and requirements and we go and build. But there's very little thought for the fact that, well, when we release into the wild and have real users, what mechanisms do we have in place to test different user behaviors, to move a button from here to here without it becoming a massive project to move that button? So great software companies are building tech which allows A/B testing is a really important thing. So you run, one group of users have one experience, one group of users have another, and you look at the data and see what happens. I reckon that's what we're missing. So we're going to be banging the drum about that with our clients and banging the drum with the software vendors that's a capability we're going to have. No good spending millions of bucks on something if we don't actually have some real life user data. I think we're making a lot of assumptions at the moment.
These companies need people from Silicon Valley, don't they? Silicon Valley hires to come in and help them with the engagement.
Danny, there's no way in hell those people are going to work.
In a super fun.
No, I don't mean that to be disparaging, but it's so regulated. So why haven't Google and these companies gone into financial services? Because it's regulated. It's too regulated. They want to work in TikTok and these companies where they can literally muck around with people's heads and use algorithms to get inside people's souls. So I it's such a shame. But that said, we're at one company actually who's recruited some people out of the gambling industry, believe it or not. And these people were literally building the UI for the gambling apps and crypto apps, which if you've ever used any, I know you're a real crypto trader, Danny. If you use, they're quite addictive. They've actually built a lot of things into the UI to keep you on there. And so that's quite a clever idea. Actually get people who are because those apps are pretty much financial services apps, even though they're terrible financial services apps. And actually I spoke to one of the people who are from that background and they actually all say, gee, I knew I was building something that was ruining people's lives. I feel good that I'm building something now that is going to help people but maybe get out. So, maybe there's a story there about recruiting good software people in from those sectors who I hope, because Lord knows we don't need more gambling apps, that's for sure. But we definitely need more apps that give good financial advice.
Yeah.
So,
let's try and flip the switch on that one in 2025. Okay, prediction number 5, startup pivots and zombies. So we said the funding environment has mostly stayed the same for all, but the brightest prospects. A number of wealth tech startups that raised capital in the 2021 bubble will now be running on empty tanks with little chance of further available capital. For these businesses with little chance of acquiring IP or talent, it will be easier to go into zombie mode. The first glimpses are usually punctuated by a lack of marketing activity and a steady stream of departures from their sales teams. The summit won't be the end. They will find creative ways to pivot, likely into AI-related projects, or turn the lights back on when conditions improve. We wish them all well. Startups are complex and even harder to keep the lights on in a market like wealth management. So true, isn't it? We've got such a small market here in Australia as well.
Yeah. It's really hard, and it's not like people are throwing. As to our point in prediction 2, it's really hard to get people to spend money on software.
I'm giving us a tick on this one, by the way. We got this right.
Oh, good. Okay, good, excellent. Yeah, not one we're happy getting right, by the way. But I think the reality is a lot of businesses got a lot of funding around the COVID time. This is sort of pre-AI COVID period where pretty much anyone with an idea was getting funded. That cash runs out really quick, right? And particularly in a high inflation environment too, startups hurt the most because there's so much competition for good developers, good talent. If they sense there's a bit of job security issue, they're just out the door, and they'll go flock to safety. So I'm not going to call out any specific businesses, obviously, but we have noticed quite a few that have gone really quiet, stopped their marketing processes, people getting other jobs. I wouldn't say that's certainly the good thing about these businesses, though, they don't necessarily have to go into administration because they don't really have debts necessarily. They're just sort of running out of cash and they go into sort of go slow mode. So you sort of hope that in time that there's an opportunity there to get back into it when conditions improve. But that's probably why some are pivoting and looking at things like AI and all the rest of it. So there's always a chance you can pull things out of the fire. I mean, I think the pivots probably haven't really been there. The one pivot I think I do want to call out, like the biggest pivot was definitely the guys at Device Rev becoming Elementor. I mean, that was a massive pivot to go from fact find client portal, was sort of what they had. And it's funny because I thought, gee, when MyProsperity was acquired, client portal, this will be an active space. And then a few months later, they're Elementor and they're basically trying to build, connective tissue between all the tech and platform providers in the industry. So,
which is a big problem to be solved in our industry.
Massive problem. So good on them for having the courage to tackle something really big. So long way to go, I'm sure, for that business. But I think that's got to be chalked up as the most courageous pivot of the year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've done really well. I remember the second project I worked on at Finura was we were consulting to a tech company who was looking to come to Australia from the UK. And we did the market analysis and the market scan of the tools that were available, similar to their tool. And, it turned out that it just wasn't going to be viable for them. The amount of users that they would ultimately have access to was, I think it was 2,000. And that was if they were lucky at a maximum. I've got such a small market. I can't unsee that now. Whenever I it's really tricky, right? And even if you do make it over here from another country, it's really hard to go up against a very monolithic established player and then the ones that are behind that monolithic established player as well.
It's expensive to build integrations, to work with all the platforms. Everything costs money to do things. I still remember who that client was. And still sort of pains me, Danny, because I think you wrote this awesome report. It was like 30 or 40 pages, very detailed. I don't think we got past the second page and the CEO said, yep, that's it. We're out. We're not coming.
Yeah, we did.
It could have been a very quick report, but you know what? I'm glad we did that because it probably saved them a lot of heartache. But I tell you what was interesting though, that company, they sold their software in their markets at a far lower rate than we would typically see software sold. Yeah. So because they had a bigger market, they were like, when we sort of said one observation that we made is, gee, your software's way too cheap. Like it would be considered suspiciously cheap in this market. And they were like, oh, really? But it's because their addressable market was 4 or 5 times the size here of Australia. It was just they could get away with it. So this is probably where the rubber is with the road too. Like even with software players here in Australia, they're just going to have to charge a bit more per user just to make it worthwhile. Really. So this is a never-ending battle. This one, I think, until we grow our advisor numbers.
Yeah, definitely. And we want to see these companies succeed, and we want the innovation here. I think it's really important, but we are kind of a little bit stuck, aren't we?
I think they come to us. They come to Australia because they see the retirement savings pool as the 4th largest savings pool in the world, $3.5 trillion, and they go, "Gee, $3.5 trillion and 32 million Australians, we've got to get here." But then someone tells them, only really 8,000 advisors that buy software, and of those, only 3 or 4 actually really want to spend money on it. So yes, that's the rub.
Yeah. All right. Number 6. Let's be friends is our prediction here. Unexpected alliances form between technology providers. Since 2021, we have been discussing the Cold War that has existed between platforms and software providers, particularly Iress. Changes in market dynamics, leadership and market capitalization will drive a rethink about how participants work together. With much to lose and everything to gain in keeping the status quo, we expect to see the major software companies and investment platforms enter into product and distribution alliances. You can't be friends with everyone, so alliances could turn into something deeper. In 2023, SS&C and Intelliflo launched a combined platform and advice tech offering in the UK. In particular, we watched our top platform's relationship with Iress with interest. This will likely be accelerated should global players like FNZ and SS&C follow the same global playbook in Australia, posing a threat to locally established players. So I'm giving us a partially right on this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, we saw, obviously, I think bit to the Elementor piece, like we've seen Elementor and CFS have quite a public partnership, which is really great to see a big company partnering with a startup effectively to do something really interesting. I think we haven't seen all of it play out just yet. We've had Iress has gone through a massive transformation, so it'd still be interesting to see how they want to evolve their relationships with platforms in the future. I would note that they divested their OneView business this year, so I think that was a stepping stone to saying to the other platforms, "Hey, we're not going to be a competitor," because that was really the concern that people had about Iress when they bought OneView, was that they're effectively going to launch a platform off the back of Xplan, which, kind of makes sense, I suppose, strategically, but difficult to do. So I think that sale of OneView to Praemium is quite symbolic. And I think it means that now you can sort of hand on heart say that Iris and the platforms and the other tech companies really aren't competing with each other directly, but have a massive way to go to actually find a way to work better together.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And the other distinction, and I think the only thing is the shoes on the other foot a little bit in the sense that because the market capitalization of some of these platforms has grown so much. So Hub and Net Wealth, I think I just did a report today. They're over $12.5 billion combined between them. Hub and Net Wealth this year collectively added the market cap equivalent to Lendlease in 1 year. Like what they just added in market cap. So there's a lot of balance sheet strength there competing for fewer and fewer advisors. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that's all going to play out. I do think Insignia outsourcing their admin to SS&C is a really interesting play, because does that mean SS&C is more active in this market? We have tipped a lot of this. And I think if those global providers have more meaningful tech relationships like SS&C with IntelliFlow, who's to say that wouldn't happen here in this market? So I sort of feel like that's got a multi-year thing to play out. So happy with you, partially right, Danny, but I was still reckon there's some stuff.
Yeah. I like how CFS Edge also, sort of led the way here with their integration platform. Yep. So they were really listening to what advisors needed.
Definitely.
In that client onboarding pain point, onboarding through to application. And they, worked really hard to address that.
Yeah.
And, that's up and running. And going pretty well. So I love how they've sort of set the scene. That was with FNZ, to your point, FNZ now well established with that that concept as well.
And we want, to be honest, I think the platforms, NetWealth, Hub, stepping in and into advice tech, whilst I know it polarizes opinion, I'm kind of glad they're doing it, because the reality is they've got the balance sheet, they've got the credibility, they've got the advisor relationships, they're good at building software. And so, when you see them step in, I think that's really good for the ecosystem, because we're all in it together, and software is bloody expensive to do. And so there'll always be competitive rivalries, competitive tensions, but I think it's really important that strong balance sheets underpin our tech providers, and we don't have the banks anymore doing this stuff. That's the problem for wealth management. So no one can be shocked that NetWealth bought Xeppo and Hub bought MyProsperity, and we'll keep seeing that. Is my tip.
Yeah. Okay. All right, number 7, this is our last one. So we said a series of wealth players are primed to go private. For several years, we've seen a number of key wealth and technology players track sideways or decline on the ASX. In 2023, Hub24's and NetWealth's performances were up 36% and 28% respectively. In contrast, we saw significant share price instability from Iris, Praemium, Link, Insignia, AMP and Bravura. If you had bought a basket of these businesses, you were down 33% in 2023.
You probably did better this year, though. A few of these companies bounced back quite strongly on rumour of acquisitions and privatisations. Can I give this a ding, 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 ding? I think this happened for sure, and I think we were right. I think not all the companies we got right, so Perpetual's one we didn't tip. But Insignia this week has had a bid from Bain to go private. I know they've rejected that offer. I think that's got a way to play out over Christmas. Iris had 3 or 4 approaches this year for not formal, but informal, leaked to the media at least. So there's always a cloud on Iris about whether they'll privatise. Who else do we see? Mason Stevens announced yesterday that they're not going to list on the ASX and they're going to stay a private company backed by private equity. I'm sure I've missed a couple here, but I don't know. Danny, give us a big green tick for that one, please.
Yeah, no, we've got a green tick. Yes. It'll up our score a little bit there.
As you can tell, everybody, I have this complex about getting Danny's approval on these things.
No half marks here. I think you deserve the full 100%.
No, but I think not a surprise. And look, these aren't, and no one should actually see a business becoming private. Oh, sorry, that one was Link. We missed Link. Link got privatised this year as well.
Yeah,
which was forever in the wings. But going private's not a bad thing. Like it actually. People sometimes associate that with a failure. It's not. The reality is that if you've got a business that needs transformation, it's very hard to do it in the public environment because you've got to report to your investors every quarter. You've got analysts in your ear who have no idea what your business actually does, but they tell you what to do. And you've got a board that's obviously under this public scrutiny all the time. And you have to do some pretty difficult things like stop dividends. And so there's just some stuff that privatization allows you to do. And so I feel like as painful as it'll be for some of these businesses, actually the right thing, and they can actually then hopefully set a longer term trajectory. But make no mistake that they're taken private and then they're often relisted. So they will end up back as ASX companies again eventually, but they'll only do it when they're in a good place to be listed, when they're growing strongly. And you've seen with the share prices of Harbour Net Wealth what can happen if you're on the ASX and you're winning in your market. You're richly rewarded. So, yeah, I think that's going to play out. I think there'll be a few more. I definitely think some of those names that we've discussed, I won't pick on anyone in particular, will go private in 2025.
Yeah, you're right. So traditionally, those businesses would have, a lot of legacy, complexity, high cost bases.
And you add the ASX piece on the top, and you go, gee, when do you have any breathing room to actually get in and fix the business? Because
Fix
you're
it up.
constantly having to explain to people what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. Very good. All right.
What was your, Danny, put you on the spot. So what was your, any sort of big surprises for the year, or things that highlights, or things that played out that you didn't expect?
I think at the beginning of the year, if we go back to the AI piece, I just didn't know what to expect. I didn't know whether this AI stuff was really going to just run away with everyone and change our lives forever. I didn't actually think that, but I kind of did have my reality hat on. But I don't know if you have noticed this, but in the past 12 months, I'm going to say in the past 12 months since AI came into play, when we deliver our technology recommendations, we normally, we do our discovery sessions with everyone in the business, and then we present that back to the business owners, and then we come up with our technology recommendations. Have you seen noticed the lack of enthusiasm and a bit of disappointment on their faces when we deliver back the tech recommendations?
Yes, I have noticed that, Danny, occasionally. I've heard it, felt it, and had to deal with it. This is our combined challenge, right?
Yeah. Not that I'm saying that I don't feel our technology recommendations are overly... I think what they are is that they're probably seen as a little bit boring, right? Because quite often we're talking to those back and middle officers, and that's where the real pain points are happening, right? And advice production, obviously, as we know. But certainly what the client service teams are having to deal with, and it maybe in the business owners' minds and the advisors' minds, it's, they hand this back, right? They hand this over to someone and it just magically gets done. So when we present those recommendations back, we're quite often offering tools that are going to really support that back office efficiency, which means you're going to get advice produced quicker, and, you can see more clients at the end of the day if you're the advisor. But it's just sort of, I think, that's been a little bit surprising, a little bit, deflating to the...
There's a couple of things at play. I think because people think tech's all exciting, and it is. And I shouldn't say it's all negative, by the way. You do get to do some great stuff with clients, but they've got to do the basics, get the basics right before we do the fancy stuff. Sort of like my son with his soccer. He can't dribble the ball properly at speed, but he's trying to do tricks that Messi does. And it's like, mate, you got to do the basics. We watched the Karate Kid movie, actually. That's how we got that whole expression about it took him... Mr. Miyagi wouldn't let him punch for like 3 months because he didn't learn how to defend. I mean, it's a bit like that, right? And so I think what we probably need to do a better job of is just explain to people that what's the possibilities if we can get these basics right. There's some really cool stuff we can turn on and build up your capability as a business to adopt change and make change part of the cadence of the business. So that's on us to get that right and sort of share that vision of where we're going. But there's no point selling the sizzle if the steak isn't there. And so that's always going to be a balance. And I feel like it must be how GPs feel when they get all these people lining up, coming into looking for Ozempic or whatever the latest thing is. I've lost track of all the GLP-1 drug names, and they're saying, you know what, this will work for a few months, but you need to eat less, you need to drink less, you need to go to the gym. No one wants to hear that. That's like, nah, I want to be like that celebrity that just took a few jabs and all of a sudden looks amazing. Yeah. So this is a human nature piece, right? And I think anyone in a consulting capacity will have lived and walked in your shoes this year at some point. One thing I would say for business owners, if you feel like you're a little disconnected or you don't know what's going on in the back office, do sort of what they do in big companies like Southwest Airlines. Every executive has to spend a day with the baggage handling team and the check-in team, and, big company CEOs do this stuff where they actually go and get on the tools. A mate of mine works for a reject shop, and he spent a couple of days last month in different reject shops regionally, packing shelves and working with them to work out what's going on, where are the problems, So
that's so good.
I reckon even a small business, you might feel close to it, but you're not. And if I could put something on the list of business owners to do maybe in early January, things are quiet, is maybe just spend a day with your new admin team or whoever the admin team is, and just look at what they do. And then you might have a different perspective on what some of the important issues to solve are.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. What about you? Any surprises?
I I genuinely just think the AI mania even caught me off guard, to be honest. Every inquiry we got was about AI. So, and I feel like it's dropping off a little bit, maybe because it's just Christmas or I'm just ignoring some of it. That sort of definitely was a big sort of surprise to me. And I think the complete non-shock was the regulatory uncertainty that this sector is still facing, and we're fighting with each other again. Sorry, we don't get too political on this podcast, but I must admit, this is my fourth round of regulatory reform in my time in the industry, yours too, Danny. And it's just the same shit over and over again. And I just wonder how come we can't regulate ourselves or drive an outcome that is just so blindingly obvious. So I don't hold a lot of optimism for changes in the future, but what is awesome, and I love that we work with other consultants like the team at Tangelo who are actually putting messages out there saying, you know what, there's a hell of a lot of things you can do now in the current regs that you don't even have to wait for. And I reckon next year we're just going to spend a lot of time doing that. So this whole narrative about, shorter SOAs, well, I'm pretty much tipping when those regs come out, it's going to look and feel exactly like we've got now, with a bit clearer guidance on a few things. People are going to wait for legislative change and then say, we need to go hire these NCA advisors with different regs. Where are you going to find them from? You should be starting that stuff now, So I sort of feel we as an industry seem to wait for permission a lot to do things. So I'm hoping to see a few more people, businesses with a bit of strength behind them, stick their neck out and lead from the front. That's what I hope for this year.
Absolutely. Shorter SOAs is an interesting one. Our research tells us that most advice businesses, I know there's a lot of noise out there about SOAs just being have to give it to your client and no one ever reads it. But our research actually tells us that's not true. Most advice businesses, the people that have completed our tech health check anyway.
Yeah, it's 160 practices though, Danny. It's a big sample size.
It is a good sample size, yeah. They say that they see the SOA as a valuable tool. It's that they want to provide to their clients.
Well, if someone's charging me $7,500 for something or more, 10, 15, some of our clients charge, I kind of want to see some documentation and detail about what's happening. My mum has an advisor. I read the SOAs that he produces for her. I don't know. So, but I think what people are really crying out for is that better. It's got to look better. It's got to look more professional. It shouldn't look like a hacked together Word document, screenshots in it and all sorts of stuff. So maybe that's what we're crying out for. And obviously we're trying to work on that. But I think like everything that, people have sort of prosecuted a case. You can do video-based SOAs now legally. You just got to put the work in. That's the hard bit, right?
It is. And it takes time. It's not an instant gratification thing.
But it's been a good year though, Danny. I've enjoyed it's certainly not dull what we do.
No, it's not dull.
The industry's not dull.
Yeah, we've got some awesome clients that we're working with and going through the change, in the thick of the change. It's really hard. It's really, really hard, but they're moving through it and getting through it, and we can see the lights at the end of the tunnels.
Big shout out to the people in the middle and back offices that we've spent time with this year doing the work. Grinding out the work. They don't get to go to the conferences. They don't get in the air time. And we've got some ideas maybe next year on how we can give them a bit more love, hey? And support.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. We have a webinar coming up to run through these predictions again early 2025. Pete and I will run those through again. And thank you for listening to our podcast in 2024. Thanks, Pete, for joining me today on our podcast.
Always fun. Wishing you a very Merry Christmas. Big year for you this year, right? So you'll be hope you're craving a quiet Christmas.
Yes, I'm tired. It's time. One more sleep to go. No more Menti Bs.
No more Menti Bs. Yes, we'll finish. I think finishing on the 20th is a really good thing for most businesses. I don't like those periods where you finish almost on Christmas Eve and you got to fall into Christmas. So at least everyone's got a weekend now to reset.
You've got nothing left in the tank at that stage. All right. Well, we hope you've got some good ideas from the podcast in 2024 and you've enjoyed the insights and enjoyed our conversations and special guests. We've got a really packed podcast schedule for 2025 covering all things wealth tech for your advice business on a different podcasting platform.
Oh, yeah, we didn't say that. So free tip of the year, if you're thinking of launching a podcast for your business, and we highly recommend you do because I think it's the best thing we've ever done as a business. We really enjoy it and it's provided a lot of value and clients actually, is don't use Podcastle. There's a tool called Podcastle, Podcastle. Do not use that one. We are still looking for another one. We're trialing one on this session today. If you have any suggestions, reach out to Danny or I. We'd love to hear it.
Send Pete an email.
Waiting for that lawsuit from Podcastle. Still waiting for my support tickets to be dealt with.
All right, quickly. Let's move along.
Let's wrap it up.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Wealth Tech Insider. If you haven't already, you can go and complete our technology health check at www.fineragroup.com to get an idea of how your business is tracking and where you could potentially make improvements with your tech stack. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and share the episode with your network. Merry Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you in 2025.